Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I'm your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with my friend Paul Convery, CEO of One World Consulting Group. Hey Paul, how's it going?
Good, Ben. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to your audience.
It's always a pleasure to see you and talk to you. I think the last time we were hanging out might have been in Portland after a Portland Relocation Council meeting. I've got to be honest with you, Paul. I'm a big fan of yours on LinkedIn. I follow all your stuff. I love your polls. I love the way that you use polls. I always find the prompts to be kind of intriguing, and I always like bite on it. And I'm just like, let me get in the mix here and see what's going on here. Paul, we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about LinkedIn. We're going to talk about resumes. We're going to talk about how people can stand apart and brand themselves and all that stuff. So, hey, if you're watching right now, get in the comments. This is your opportunity to get almost like maybe a free kind of virtual coaching session from a couple of people that know a little something about it. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. You know. Paul, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in Seattle, Washington. Nice sunny Seattle today,
Beautiful.
and loving life in Seattle.
Looks like maybe you're at like a art gallery or something there.
I'm in my virtual office. Yeah. So this is part of the artwork back here. It's actually real. So yeah. So it's I like to put a little bit of spice into the conversation.
Yeah. No, I dig it. I dig it. Somebody's saying my audio is low, so I'm gonna try to fix that real quick here. Thank you for that. 1 minute. 1 minute. Check. 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 How's that sound, everybody?
Right.
Great. Cool. We got people checking in. Get in the comments. I want to know who you are, where you are, what in the world you're thinking. Mike Quigley, One World rocks. Love Mike Quigley.
Mike's a great guy.
Love it. Christian said, free is good. He said, your price to move. I like it. Christian, I want to hear your questions in there in the comments. Mike Quigley, I want to hear your questions as well. Christian from the Real OC joining. Can't wait to get started. Hit that like button, y'all, and get in there. But Mike says Paul will not be outworked. Yeah, we'll see about that, Mike, because I bring a work ethic to the table too. Okay, Mike. All right. No, but Paul, tell everybody real quick a little bit about what you do and how you got to this place and maybe kind of how many folks you've kind of impacted and been able to help.
Yeah, my journey started over 25 years ago. I used to work in the nonprofit sector, and I would help individuals who were trying to re-enter the workforce, who had mental and physical impairment. And I would work with the employment community to help get them reestablished into a career. From that, entered the world of tech recruiting, and that was basically the basis of my recruiting experience for about 20 years. And then I've been doing my own business for about almost 12 years now, where I provide recruiting and career coaching services to individuals, not just in Seattle, but around the world.
I know
I've probably coached over about 5,000 people.
That's unreal. 5,000 people. Explain to me how the recruiting and the consulting works, because I know a thing or two about recruiting, right? But how do these things go hand in hand in your opinion?
Well, it's fine. I set it up this way because I wanted to diversify my business, and I also wanted to be a feeder for each of those service lines, right? And so a lot of people ask me, when they contact me, can you help me get a job, right? They want me to actually have a physical job ready for them. That's not how it works, right?
No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
I wish it worked that way, right? It's like...
Right. Yeah, and I've even had people come up to me and say, hey, can I pay you thousands of dollars to help me find a job? I'm like, that doesn't work. There's no guarantees.
Tell people why that doesn't work, though, Paul. Set the record straight there.
It doesn't work because we only can control certain variables. I don't control what the client does. I don't know what the internal competition is with candidates. There's all sorts of factors. There's economic factors. Companies pull the jobs. So there's no way that I can control it 100%. I maybe can control it 50%, but to put some type of guarantee in there is actually, it's actually very unethical.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out.
And you probably would feel really terrible taking thousands of dollars from somebody and then eventually not being able to necessarily land them their dream job, right? I mean, that would be the worst feeling in the world, right? Make matters worse.
Yeah.
I do see some people out there that are doing this. I mean, traditionally, recruiting firms work for the hiring company and go out and find or headhunt the talent and bring them to the table. I mean, that's what we do, right? That's probably what I imagine what you've done in your career, right? But there are some out there that are going and they're actually claiming to be able to help candidates, and I really worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people who are in desperate situations where they've already spent thousands and thousands of dollars and they can't get their money back. And then they're coming to me and saying, listen, I need help, you know. So and people do get desperate and they think that when they pay that amount of money or they're offering this kind of service, that it's going to be kind of the golden ticket. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. We got people checking in here. Get in the comments here. I'd like to know what your experience as a job seeker is and what questions you have from career expert Paul Convery. Rob Zeitz checking in. Hello from Air Inc. in Cambridge, Mass. Wicked smart, Rob. I love the artwork. And Ben, I love the light setup behind you. I feel like that was a consolation, Rob, but I'll take it. They know I'll take it. Richard Majewski says, love from Staybridge, Vauxhall. You know a thing about the UK, don't you, Paul?
I do, you know. I have my lovely wife of 22 years who's from England.
Yeah.
And my parents are from Scotland, so very very familiar with the UK.
You know, I always thought Deb sounded smart, but does she have an accent? Is that what it is this whole time?
No accent.
Okay.
She came here when she was 2 years old. So.
Okay. All right. So she's just actually smart. Okay. Shout out to Deb. Teresa, love the artwork. Everybody wants the artwork, huh? Let's see here. Adrian, checking in from Global HQ. What's up, Adrian? Hit that like button. Oh my gosh. Speak of the devil here. Deb Convery checking in from SF. What's up, Deb? Good to see you. Got to get Deb. What do I got to ask? You're a career coach. What do I got to do to get Deb Convery on Love and Relo? I mean, 650 episodes in. You know,
you got to go through me. You got to go through me.
Am I using the wrong recruiter? Is that the problem? Is that what it is? Do I need Do I need some resume help? So do I need to get my LinkedIn optimized?
You know the secret.
What is it, like a couple glasses of wine? You know, use Paul. You know, I don't know. Yeah, shout out to Deb. Deb's one of the top 5 people I've not been able to wrangle on the show in the past here. Jason Masia checking in from San Antonio. What's up, Jason? Get in the comments. I want to know what your questions are right now for Paul. We got some stuff we're going to touch on, but I'm going to take questions first. Christian has a question for you, Paul. Paul, for the mobility industry, where do you see the job market going? There's a lot of unemployed mobility people around right now.
I mean, I think what's happening in the marketplace, a lot of companies are consolidating positions. Middle management is also going to be highly effective here. Now, obviously, with AI coming in, that's going to take a couple of years to kind of weed itself through. But I just think, you know, individuals need to really take a look internally at themselves and say, listen, where am I lacking skills? Where can I acquire those skills within my current company? And how do I start to diversify, right? To me, it's always about, okay, if I can learn other skills and about other positions, and if I have a diverse skill set, that's going to help me kind of navigate through the challenges that we're all experiencing, not just in the mobility industry, in the tech industry, in the manufacturing. I mean, all sorts of industries are being affected by, the economic conditions. There's just all sorts. So again, I'm always of the mindset, continuous learning, networking, but taking advantage of opportunities within your own internal company where you can learn to acquire new skills, whatever that may be.
I want to ask you about that, Paul, because you work across varied industries with a lot of different things. I mean, you coach over 5,000 people. What are those skill sets that you're seeing are in high demand where you can go from being just another piece of paper in the stack to being like, wow, I got to talk to this person?
Ben, you and I are both salesmen at our core. You got to learn how to sell. You got to learn how to sell.
I was thinking the same thing.
Seriously. Not only learning how to sell, but you got to learn to communicate and understand your target audiences too. And so I always tell people in my coaching sessions, we got to get some publications out there, articles, whatever the case is, because companies also want to see how do you articulate and communicate ideas, and how do you get that across, right? And so you've got to be a good salesperson.
But is that important for someone, let's say, sitting in an HR global mobility role? How does that apply? Because I bet you a lot of folks sitting out there like, listen, Paul, great, salespeople, fine, and talk to them dime a dozen all the time, right? But what does that have to do with little old me sitting over here trying to get an HR global mobility job?
Yeah, but little old me has got to go with it. If I'm in HR, okay, I want to be able to sell an idea to my boss, sell an idea to my boss's boss.
I'm trying to get approval to go to ERC in a week over here. I can't even get that approved sometimes.
Well, but again, how you message that and how you package that, it's all selling. Now, the word selling gets thrown around, and there's different interpretations of what that means. As long as whatever you're selling, you can back it up, and so yeah, it's all about communication. It's all about getting your ideas in an orderly fashion, and then presenting the why. Why, if I'm your boss, you want me to, sponsor this training or put you in a situation where you can go work with another team to acquire other skills. You got to give me a reason for that. And how is that going to benefit me?
Yeah. You're so spot on. I mean, this literally is, frankly, symptomatic of the age-old problem that we've heard in global mobility, where people are trying to get a quote-unquote seat at the table, right? It's a question of influence. It's a question of how much social capital do you have in that organization, and how well can you build a business case and justify the investment that you're asking to be made, whether it's something as small as a few grand to go to GWS in a couple of weeks, or if it's as big as going from a lump sum to a fully managed program. You need to sell it, and I think it can't be understated. And I think too many people run awry because they think that's not in their job description, right? Because when you read the job description, I'm holding up my pretend global mobility manager job description right now. When you read it, it doesn't say sales skills, sales ability, sales experience, right? It doesn't say that. And it's so funny. Have you ever seen this? When on the job description, it's not actually what people are looking for. Like the stuff that they really want in here, they don't even put on the page. How confounding is that, Paul? It's true. It happens all the time.
You got to read between the lines, right? And it's like, okay, how do you read between the lines on these job descriptions? But I get it all the time, right? Like I've worked with a lot of software engineers, and they're not salespeople. They're like, here's my skills. What's the problem? They should hire me. Well, it's like, no. So you got to get out of your comfort zone. You have to, because in order to kind of move this forward in your career, if you don't have that as part of your foundation, it's going to be extremely difficult in this kind of, new marketplace that we're in right now.
Get in the comments. I want to hear your questions, whether you're a job seeker, whether you're looking for career advice on how to move up inside your organization, whether you just want to spruce up and optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to stand out and build a personal brand like Paul's done or like I've done. Get in the comments here. This is your opportunity. Paul normally charges millions of dollars for this information, okay? But he's giving it away for free today. I might be hyperbolizing a slight bit.
You are. Hey, on that note, I'll tell you one thing. There's a lot of, I call them characters out there, that do take advantage of individuals, their vulnerabilities, and they're charging a crap load of money.
It's a lot of money.
So, people can message me directly and say, what should I be paying for this service? What is fair? Because there's a lot, it varies incredibly.
What do you think, like I always wondered about this, right? Because I always thought, man, maybe I should have a coach, right? and I think about it all the time. What's a good budget for a coach? I mean, I don't know if that's a fair question.
I think $100 an hour.
Yeah.
I think $100 an hour. Yeah.
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 Okay.
I mean,
because you get some people that are paying, charging thousands of dollars a month for this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to me that's outrageous because, is that coach giving you the tools so you can also go find out what you need to do?
Yeah, and are you going to be bankrupt when you figure it out? It's like, are you going to be?
I mean, that's where I go back to. These companies are just charging crazy amounts, and it's really, I have a real problem with that, and I try to call them out where I can find them.
Let's we're going to get some questions. Get your questions in here. I've got questions too. Get in the comments here with your questions. Quickly says only one world can connect you, Ben, to get Deb on. Yes, most likely true, especially when she's on the lam, like right now. She's heading to the Move for Hunger truck pull with Britt Bemis and Jessica Bravo. Shout out to Britt and Jessica. Fantastic, and all the people at the Move for Hunger truck pull. We got Erica Massey checking in from Virginia. Erica says, when considering a transition to a new role, especially in a different industry or function, what are the key factors you recommend focusing on to position oneself effectively? How can candidates best showcase transfer? We're going to break this into two questions. So first part is you're pivoting into a new industry, right? Global mobility shrinking, volumes are down. It's not strategically as important as I'd like to be. I want to go to a new industry. How do I pivot?
I mean, it really comes down to understanding your successes. What have I achieved? Understanding both your hard skills and your soft skills. One thing that we look for when people are transitioning into new positions within other industries is, what are those leadership principles that you bring to the table, even if you're an individual contributor? So when you can package all of that and create a narrative around that, it's easy for another organization in a different industry to kind of see the transferability of those skills and experiences.
I agree with you. When you start telling your story, people are going to automatically adapt it to their industry, as long as you leave out, like, was a top 100 global mobility professional. Well, now you've pigeonholed yourself. But, when recognized as a top professional, and spoke at, conferences and wrote thought pieces, okay, cool. Well, you could do that for you. So I like that. You mentioned soft skills and hard skills. And I want to ask you, what are the difference there?
So I look at a hard skill as, like, if I'm a software engineer, right?
Okay.
I'm working with Java, Python. I look at that as hard skills.
Yep.
I look at soft skills as, I have high emotional intelligence. I'm adaptable. I've got some good conflict resolution skills,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, try to, look at those other skills, ability to deal with ambiguity, things like that,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Also, just to finish that point.
Yeah, please.
When you're structuring a resume, you never want to be leading in with your work experience first, especially when we're trying to pivot to a different industry. That's why you want to be leading in with those key successes, those core skills, those leadership principles. And then also, I'm a big believer, because I treat this as a selling exercise, you want to have recommendations on that resume.
Interesting.
And again, traditional way of doing resumes, we never did that.
No.
But again, this is a selling exercise.
Yeah, it was always references furnished upon request. Like, we're going to hold back the best part of the whole thing.
I want to create a narrative on the front end of that resume, so by the time they get to my experience, and especially if I'm pivoting to a different industry, they're already sold on me as a candidate,
Yeah. I love that idea. And now you're using social proof, and especially if these people have a good title, or are well respected or whatever.
Absolutely.
Big company. Erica's second part, now this is a good transition into the second part of Erica's question. Get in the comments. If you've got a question for Paul or myself, get in here. I love these questions. Erica says, how can candidates best showcase transferable skills and experience to make a strong case for their fit in the new area?
Well, that's where those recommendations can come in, where you've got recommendations that can help verify some of those transferable skills, and experiences, so that it really helps sell that narrative to them. But also within those accomplishments, right? Because again, I don't care who you are, what industry you're going on, if you can showcase to an employer that you're an above average candidate, they're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to learn more about you.
Definitely. And I would say along with that, Erica, as Paul said, using those recommendations and spotlighting them in there, I like to put the photo, I like to basically do what LinkedIn does, right? I like to put the photo of the person there with the recommendation and the blurb, the title and company of the person. If I'm looking to pivot out of the industry, I may, instead of like prioritizing like RMC president, I may prioritize corporate client that worked at Fortune 500 company, because now that's a household brand. Like, so say I have a mobility manager at Google, or I have the president of Cardis, we'll just say. I might eschew the president of Cardis, and I might prioritize the manager of Google, because now Google's a household name, right? So there's a lot of brand.
It's that name recognition.
Yeah,
absolutely,
100%. And I love what you're saying there with the recommendations. Yeah, really.
I mean,
really good
you
stuff.
also you did that on your LinkedIn profile, in your featured section of your profile.
Yeah.
You've got recommendations set. So again, part of the mindset is you also have to treat yourself as your own business entity when you're job searching.
So true. If you were a business, what would you do? Customer recommendations up front, 5 stars.
Well, you and I do that.
Yeah.
So
100%.
It's like that helps our business.
I've added them to the front page of my website. I have. We're going to ask Paul some more questions, but get in the comments. I want to hear your questions. Hit that like button. Christian says, what about telling stories about Smurfs and rabbits? Does that set me apart as a candidate?
I think I would shut it right down at that point.
Okay, I don't disagree with Paul, but I will say in Christian's defense, I know what stories about Smurfs and rabbits he's referencing. There were stories about his expat experience. I do think they ingratiate you to the person. You want to don't be too overly quirky and stuff, because you can raise red flags, or salmon flags, as we say in the office here. But I do think showing people a little bit of yourself in a warm and endearing way is nice. What are your thoughts, Paul?
I definitely think so, and I think when you can bring in stories of your family, or places you visited, and different success stories with people that you impacted in their lives. I think that's all good stuff. But I'm not going to sit there and talk about a TV show, or because I don't know if that's going to going to actually resonate with my audience.
Right. What if they don't like that TV show, or they're not a sports fan, or they're not a whatever, right? But I do think, though, Christian touched on something here, and I think that you kind of said it too. I think next to sales skills, and maybe this is a subset of it, storytelling is an enormous, and it's so funny because these are old skills. These are skills that have been around for. Storytelling is predates the written word, right? We're all storytellers, so we have to become good storytellers. It's not enough to be operationally excellent. It's not enough to let your work speak for itself and think that you're going to get noticed. And this goes whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for relevance and significance within your company now. It's not enough to expect someone to notice you. I run into this all the time, and I hate to say it, but it's not their job to notice how great you are. It's your job. You have to be your own advocate.
And again, it goes back to that mindset. If I'm my own business, the product is me. I've got to be my best advocate. I've got to be the one out there selling that, internally or externally.
For sure. And Mike quickly says, value add props. Yeah, what is your value prop? Why should people hire you? And I like to talk about it in terms Paul, what's your thoughts about putting numbers into your resume and using concrete deliverables like that?
100%, as long as it's not proprietary information, But going back to pivoting to a different industry, it's like highlighting those value props or key differentiators that allowed you to stand out. That's what we also look for too when somebody is changing to a different industry, because again, a lot of this stuff that we all do, it's very transferable to other industries. No industry has a monopoly on these skills or these ways of doing. I mean, a lot of this stuff is interrelated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see here. We got some people getting in the comments here. Guys, put your questions in here. I love your questions. We're going to prioritize them. Vinny Valverde checking in here. So good to see Paul, my buddy Paul on the show.
Hey, Vinny.
Vinny said you did an incredible job at the PRC. What'd you do at the PRC?
Well, we did something similar, and just talking about, career management, resumes, LinkedIn. Interviewing is a big deal too. Like,
gosh.
I find that the whole art of interviewing. I spend a lot of time because I'm also an interview coach.
Oh, nice.
And there's a certain way where, you can increase your probability, right?
Talk about it. Give us some tips real quick. And Mike, I see you in there. Get in the comments there as well, y'all.
Yeah, well, definitely from an interview perspective, it actually reverts back to the resume. How you structure and message your resume can actually influence how they interview. Because I don't know about you, but my experience hiring people at different companies, the majority of people or companies that are hiring candidates don't know how to properly interview candidates.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
They're not properly trained. It's not their fault. It's just that sometimes when they're interviewing candidates, that's just an add-on to their regular job. They don't want to be interviewing candidates. It's the last thing they want to do. So I always try to instruct the people I work with, listen, we need to create a resume that's going to influence not just getting you an interview, but also influencing how they can interview you. And how you structure that message, that can have a huge impact on their line of questions to you, which can increase your success or failure in an interview.
Yeah, tremendous point. I love it. Absolutely tremendous point.
And then also your questions to them. Where interviews are lost in one is your line of questions to them.
Oh man, what a great point about the questions, right? So often we think an interview is hiring manager is going to ask me, the candidate, a series of questions. I'm going to try to get out of this thing alive and not look like an idiot. And then at the end, how did I do? And it's like people want to talk. People want to be asked questions. They want you to find them interesting and you to ask them about their experience. If you can get someone else doing most of the talking in an interview, A, I guarantee it's going to go long. B, I guarantee they're going to like you. And I mean, gosh, that's half the battle, right?
Yeah, and people like talking about themselves too.
Gosh, tell me about it. I built a whole show around it. And everybody thinks I'm such a great guy. Well, I'm just asking you to talk about yourself. It's like I'm not doing anything new here. Dale Carnegie talked about this. He said back in How to Win Friends and Influence People, which, by the way, to me is still the seminal sales book ever created, 1934, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He says you go to a cocktail party, you spend the entire time talking to somebody, asking them questions about themselves. They do 90% of the talking. At the end, they're going to say, man, that Ben, he was a great conversationalist. It's like, it's not rocket science.
That's the secret. That's the secret.
It's not. Let's keep them coming. Get in the comments here. We got questions coming in. I want to hear your questions. This is your opportunity here. Rob saying 100% about storytelling. Show, don't tell. When someone I'm interviewing can tell me stories, demonstrating the experience and skills, it gives them so much more depth, and I want to know more. Yeah. Don't tell me you have empathy. Tell me a story about having empathy.
Tell me a story or revert a success to where you've demonstrated that experience and skill set,
Love it, Rob. And there's also a key to land the plane. Do it quickly, get to the point, right? Know your story arc, right? Problem, solution, result. Problem, solution, result. Problem, solution, result. Love it. Jason's got a question. Keep these questions coming, y'all. Jason says, how do you approach an organization that has a lack of diversity in leadership?
So what do you mean approaching them? Approaching them for what? To give them some insight into their lack of diversity in leadership? I'm curious, what are we looking for here?
Jason, question? Define this question a little bit more, but in the absence of information, I'm always good to make something up. What I'm going to say here is if you're an interviewer and maybe you're a diverse candidate and you're going in and you maybe might feel like the only one in the room, right? Maybe it's all men and you're a female. Maybe it's a person of color and they're all white, right? Whatever it is. And how would you approach that situation? Or how would you counsel people to approach that situation?
Well, I mean, I think it's important for them to acknowledge that this is the situation, and is this an organization that I would want to work for? Because if lack of diversity in leadership is one of my criterias, where that's a negative to me, then maybe that's not the company I want to work for. You know, and you can usually find that out before the interview, obviously. You know, where you can find out. You know, a lot of times, you know, here's our leadership team. But I think a lot of companies that maybe lack diversity in leadership are, you know, they're obviously more open to looking at diverse candidates, because again, it's only going to make them, you know, a smarter organization. It's going to make them be more well-rounded. It's going to make them, you know, get different perspectives, and I think that's good for business. You know.
Definitely. I will say calling it out is risky. Because on the one hand, you could say, "Hey, you know, are y'all looking to diversify this leadership? I feel kind of like I'm the only one in this room." It could work. It could work really well for you, or it could put people on the defensive. Because,
it's kind of obvious. So why would I need to bring that up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I understand that.
But what? Now I'm going to take this a slightly different angle here. What about when people talk about culture fit? Right, we're looking for a culture fit, and this can be a really slippery slope. Because am I saying I want somebody that fits into the culture I already have, or do I want a culture add that's going to make us and enhance us, kind of like you were describing before? Am I afraid that I can't be myself now because I bring other people in that aren't necessarily just like me, who are going to reaffirm what we're already doing? You know, I mean, I'm wondering if you've seen those dynamics and how you worked with those.
I mean, I definitely think more and more companies it's smart business where you want to bring in diverse thought, diverse ideas, diverse cultures. It's only going to make the company stronger. It's only going to make the company attract better talent out there, because again, we're not just focusing on a narrow focus of a population or a culture. It's like, absolutely. I mean, I don't care what industry you're in, you know, if you're not culturally diverse, not just from a culture perspective, from a ethnic perspective, I mean, thoughts and ideas, I mean, that fosters innovation, that fosters us learning from each other. And those are key skills as well that organizations look for. You know, are you innovative? Do you want to learn? Are you curious? Like, those are things that need to be highlighted on a resume and in an interview.
Yeah. Jason says, interesting response. It's a tough topic. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you, Jason. Feel free to clarify and put some more stuff in the comments here. Keep those questions and comments coming. Christian's observed the lack of interviewing skills, very underrated. He says he's way too nosy not to ask questions when I'm being interviewed. Good. People are going to find you interesting, and that's very important.
You want to ask questions. I mean, you're interviewing them.
100%. And that really changes the power dynamic too, by the way.
It really does. It's like, I want them to know that, listen, I'm also interviewing you, and I'm also going to make a buying decision.
Yeah, and you have to prove that you're good enough for me to come work at, you know.
Because we want that to come across, because they're going to be like, wait a minute, we got to get this person.
Yes. Awesome. Mike Quigley keeps repeating himself, which means I'm not doing my job. He says some large companies use AI to scan over thousands of resumes. Is there a difference the way it is built to get the robots to put you on top of the list?
I mean, obviously, when you're submitting, there's all sorts of applicant tracking systems out there, and basically what happens is you put your resume in, that system is going to stack rank all of the candidates. And what I tell people that they need to do is, on a resume, have an introductory targeted opening statement that is specifically targeting your experience and your skills to whatever that language is being called out in that job description. And then look at your core skills and make sure that we've got, it's almost a bit of a word match, obviously, because at the end of the day, when a company is getting, I'll use 100 applicants, which is so low now, but if a company gets 100 people applying to a job, they're only really looking at the top 10 or 15 applicants. Yep. So I got to do everything I can to increase my ranking in the system. And how you do that is that opening statement and also those core skills. And then there's also certain things you can do in your work experience that calls out those skills. But, you know, and I also get people saying, well, I can just create an AI generated resume that's going to fit 100% to that job. Well, guess what? Companies are seeing that and they're calling those out and they're trashing those resumes. That's happening out there right now.
Yeah, AI is slippery, right? Because on the one hand, it makes you look a little bit better. It's a little bit faster. It makes you look a little bit better than you are. But as soon as somebody knows they're reading it, all trust goes out the window. So you might get like a 20% gain in the way it comes off or looks or whatever. But is it worth 100, like I don't say 100%, 80% risk of getting trashed when somebody figures out that that's what it is?
That risk is increasing right now.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you, Mike. Get in the comments, y'all. Keep these questions coming. Really curious what you got going here. Erica says, when applying online, especially for roles reviewed by younger internal recruiters, how important are design elements like color and layout on a resume?
It doesn't matter. We want to keep it black and white, keep it simple. We don't want to be using tables. We don't want to be using borders, different fonts. Like, you want to keep this simple. You know, that's it.
I am going to offer a slightly different perspective. I am a sucker for aesthetics. Right? You may have picked up on that, Paul. I don't know if you see my pocket square from there or not.
Very nice.
I'm a sucker for some color, right? A little pop of color over here, right? I was going through some resumes yesterday. We're looking for a video production person here, right? To help with some of the shows and stuff. Adam's just, his business is blowing up. And so I'm looking through these resumes, and you know, the ones that have like really cool aesthetics. Now, granted, this was a creative position, okay, right?
Which might be a little different.
Yeah. You know, but some of this stuff was like, ooh, that's catching my eye, you know? And then some of the stuff was like, it wasn't done well. It was the opposite. You're like, oh, they really could have done better with that. But it did catch my eye a little bit. Let me ask you this one, Paul. What do you think about a picture on a resume?
I don't recommend a picture because you know what? What
if you look really handsome and have a nice little side part?
Like you and me, right?
Yeah.
I like to have a link to my LinkedIn profile on my resume so that they could simultaneously look at my resume and look at my profile. So therefore, I don't put a picture on my resume. I don't want that. You know? Yeah. I just don't want that. Maybe in Europe, in those European countries, yes.
Oh, they do. They do that in Europe. So now the second part of Erica's question is kind of interesting and kind of goes to Quigley's question, which is, will zhuzhing it up with all this graphics and stuff affect its ability to be scanned, sorted, ranked, etc. by the ATS?
100%.
Oh, see.
It will affect the ranking. Yeah, because all the systems are looking for is, okay, we're doing the skills match, and then it's going to, give a score to the resume. But when you start putting in fancy borders, shading, tables, that's going to skew that, and I don't recommend it. But with a creative person, when I look at a creative person's resumes, I want to look at their portfolio. So I want to see a link to their portfolio on, maybe they have a separate website for their portfolio of work.
Well, you know what, you're really good, Paul. And Mike says, hey, if we both get on a treadmill, I'm getting off first because Paul will not be outworked.
That is correct.
Mike's such a clown. I love you, man.
Unless Mike's safe. Unless Mike's safe in Florida, that's okay.
This is crazy. Christian's saying in Switzerland a photo is mandatory.
Yeah.
It makes age discrimination so much easier. I mean, that's the flip side of it. I mean,
it really does, man. But I've had people use younger pictures, because that's another thing with respect to age discrimination. We don't need the entire work history on the resume because, again, it exists. Ageism exists out there when people are job searching. So my recommendation is we don't need the entire history. We go back 15 years and we cut it at that. That's it.
Yeah, really interesting.
That's real. It's
Christian, yeah, Christian, I'm going to tell you honestly, as a recruiter, and people don't like when I say this, the way your LinkedIn profile looks is extremely important because we're literally scanning through them. So your headline, I mean, when I do a search and say I put in relocation into LinkedIn, I'm going to get 50,000 results, okay, and I'm looking for the one, okay, and I'm scrolling through, and what do I have? Like 4 pieces of information. Okay, the first one's a picture, the second one is a name, the third one is like a headline, and the fourth one's like a location. Oh, and I have a 5th piece of information, if I'm already connected to that person or not. Is it a 1st degree, 2nd degree, or 3rd degree connection? And that's what I know about you. And I'm basically deciding if I'm going to click into you to discover more about you based on what I see. So understanding those 5 pieces of information are all I got to work on, and I got to go through 50,000 profiles to find the one, or maybe the 10 that I'm even going to try to talk to. I'm not going to say it's right. I'm just going to say it's the way it is. And you got to just know it.
There's a 6th one too.
What's that?
Do you know above the picture there's the banner going across the page? There's the banner. Like on yours, you've got a picture of yourself. And
once you click into the profile, yes.
Right. So what a lot of people do, they don't put anything on there. So as part of the personal branding, we want to see some type of imagery that's going to tell me, oh, Paul's a software engineer, Ben's a project manager. We want some imagery back there because, again, as a recruiter, I'm looking for that. Because, again, if we talk about LinkedIn is a recruiting platform at the end of the day.
It really is.
Think about it. So I want to make sure that I've got a profile that is going to make it as easy as possible for recruiters like you and me to find the candidates that we want. And part of that is that banner going across the top can make a big difference too.
I love it. It's valuable real estate. You can have a lot of fun with it for sure. Vinny's saying, hey, my resume is green and yellow all the way, flashing lights and all. Brazil, let's go. I think Vinny's trolling. We have a Brazilian troll here in the comments here. Love you.
Gotta love Vinny. Gotta love him.
Love him. Let's see here. Jason says, I bring up the topic of diversity because in my 22 years in the relocation industry across both organizations I work for, senior leadership lacked diversity. While I had a seat at the table, I consistently advocated for our crews and drivers who looked like me. That's unfortunate, Jason. I'm sorry.
And unfortunately, there's I've seen lately where there's been a movement where a lot of organizations haven't put a lot of resources into their diversity, equity, and inclusion departments. They've actually been cutting those, and which I think is a tremendous mistake. Yeah. But it's unfortunate.
Adrian echoes your sentiments exactly. Black and white, clean and clear is best. Yeah.
Agreed.
What other let's stay on LinkedIn for just a second here. What other tips do you have maybe for folks in optimizing their LinkedIn profiles for their career?
Yeah, I definitely think in their skills section, there's a skills section on LinkedIn, and you want to make sure that you're highlighting 50 to 75 skills. Because again, as recruiters, when we're looking for candidates, the algorithms on LinkedIn are looking in that skills section, number one. Number two, in your about section, right? You want to take pieces of that resume, your accomplishments, your core competencies, maybe your leadership principles. You want to put that into that about section and have a good summary at the top of that about section. Because a lot of times as recruiters, we're just looking at the about section. We may glance through the experience, and then we're getting down to the skills and maybe the recommendations. Recommendations are key too. I always tell people, try to have 4 or 5 good recommendations in the more recent past. That's really critical. Last 5 years, have a manager, have a colleague, have a client, have a diverse, recommendations from people who have interacted with you in different capacities. That's really important. And lastly, what a lot of people don't do is they don't utilize like writing articles on LinkedIn, because a lot of companies, when they're deciding who they want to interview, not only are they looking at a resume, they also want to see, what have you published out there? Have you written a white paper? So a lot of people haven't written white papers, or they can't share articles they've written internally because of proprietary information, utilizing the article feature on LinkedIn and creating content. That, I'm telling you, that makes a heck of a difference when they're deciding, do I want to talk to this candidate or do I want to talk to this candidate? When they can see a written articles that you've written, you know, that's all.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. I was going through that process yesterday when I was looking around and we take a deep dive. We go down the rabbit hole. We start looking at all their videos. We start looking at all their articles.
How do they communicate? How do they communicate? You know,
I decide if I want to interview them at all based on what I'm seeing there. Are they goofy? Are they impressive? What kind of choices are they making? You know, Jason saying I contribute to LinkedIn articles. Yes, Christian, use a banner of the map of Paris metro system. Interesting.
Don't do that.
Why? Tell me why.
Well, again, that banner, we want that banner to reflect who you are from a job titling perspective, from a job category perspective.
Yeah.
Again, if we look at LinkedIn as a recruiting platform.
You know, I'm kind of with you, right? Like as a US based person, I'm like, okay, that's cool, but not for me. Right? Because I'm looking for a US-based role or I have a US-based company or whatever. Meanwhile, Christian lives in Orange County, California, and could very much help me, you know, with consulting. And yet I begin to make a quick assumption about where
we're scanning these things. We're scanning these things.
Yep. Industry stuff here. Yep. Very cool. Yep. Awesome.
That's awesome.
This is really, really great, Paul. Question now for people who interview people. We'll turn the tables a little bit here. Have you heard of any like good interview questions or techniques? I mean, you kind of mentioned before that interviewers kind of lack skills sometimes, and I'll be honest, it is kind of hard, and that's not your day job every day. Any questions that we should maybe kind of be asking or gravitate towards in order to kind of get to the bottom?
Well, the best one, one of the best ones I like is, okay, tell me one of your weaknesses, right? Mm-hmm. And then they tell me the weakness, and then I say, okay, give me another weakness. Then they're like, oh.
I only had one. I had one.
Yeah, make sure that in your and again, how have you turned that weakness into a strength? You know?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I read one,
what are you doing to turn that weakness into a strength? You know?
Yeah, I read one a couple days ago, and it said, okay, so we hire you. 3 years later, 3 years from now, you leave. Why are you leaving? I was like, oh, holy crap. I was like, that's a really interesting question.
Well, I mean, there could be a whole line of reasons for that.
Well, and I guess.
No,
sorry,
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the reason I like that question is because it tells me what you're really looking for in a job. Right. The reason I'm leaving is because my boss didn't listen to my ideas. Okay, you're looking for kind of that kind of culture. The reason I'm leaving is because I did not make the income you promised me. Okay, you're money motivated. The reason I'm leaving is because, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think it would tell me a lot about what it takes to get the person and keep the person.
But a real doozy you could ask is, why should we not hire you?
Why should we not hire you? Yeah, I love those types of questions. Well,
so
you know
I want them to use their critical thinking skill. I want to see how they deal with a kind of a really left field type question. How do I answer that?
I love that question because it also shows me how comfortable I am with being, how self-aware I am, how vulnerable I'm willing to be. Am I the kind of person that's going to be like, take feedback well? Am I the kind of person that's going to tell you what I'm really thinking? And am I the person that's going to be very comfortable with like, you know what, you're right, I could have done better on that. Like, to me, a person that answers that question really super honestly.
Well, we want authenticity. We want authenticity, because I think authenticity has been, you know, we don't have enough of that, right? People are putting on these different looks, and a lot of it's not real. So it's like, I think people and companies want real, you know.
Really cool stuff. Speaking of real, let's have some fun, Paul. You want to play a game with me?
I'll play a game with you, Ben.
Let's play a game here, okay? So my favorite one of our most popular segments here on the show is overrated, underrated. Okay, Paul, are you familiar with how to play this game?
I'm not, but just we can make it work.
It seems intuitive, I know, but there's a couple curveballs here. Okay, first I'm going to give you some categories. You are going to tell me if it is either overrated or underrated. These are your two options. Do not get cute with it. Okay. Second, I will tell you if you are right.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Get in the comments here. Let's all let Paul know if he's right. The first one up is overrated, underrated. The stock market.
I think the stock market is definitely overrated.
What do you mean? We had 43 record highs this year, Paul.
Yeah, but you start peeling back the onion and really
you start crying.
You start crying. That's the funny stuff out there. And really it's about 6 or 7 companies really helping drive that. I think we're at 42,000 on the Dow, and
yeah,
that's when you start when you get to reality. I mean, it's not as robust as we might think.
Well, I think we see that, right? There's like this major disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street. Stock market's hitting all these highs. Our personal wealth and salaries are kind of like, I'm having a tough time keeping up with the price of milk right now. Unless
it's not a good economic indicator.
No, it's not. And I've actually
politicians use that as a selling tool.
Well, they do, depending on who's in office, right? I mean, if it's the person that's in office, they're boasting about it. If it's the person that's not in office, they're going to use some other indicator, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think the stock market performance is not really a bellwether for how we're doing as a country. Although participation in the market is, I think, at a pretty high level right now.
Which is good.
Yeah, we should all be, right, building our wealth that way. Yeah, you know what? Overrated it is. All right, you got a point, Paul. You're on the board early. It's usually a strong indicator. All right, next one up here. Unemployment rate, overrated or underrated?
I think it's definitely overrated. So when I say overrated, I'm saying that the unemployment rate is overrated because they say it's 4%.
Yeah,
it's probably
4%,
more like,
record low.
It's probably more like 8 or 9 or 10%.
Yeah, it feels much higher than it is, right? Same thing with the stock market. It doesn't feel as good as it sounds. Employment rate feels higher than and are people underemployed and like what
Right. What's the labor participation rate? Right. That's declining.
Yeah.
I think it's 63% or 62% right now, which is low.
Yeah, it is interesting. And then of course, that whole faux pas around, the labor thing came out and said we were off by 800,000 jobs over, X amount of months. And you're just like, okay, cool, whatever.
No,
we could have told you that.
It's not real, man.
We're all sitting here like, we could have told you that. I feel like before the jobs report comes out, you could just ask me. I'll tell you how it's going, okay? I'll tell you how many open jobs.
And you know what? I mean, I also look at it as, okay, what are people saying on the street, right? It's like Amazon's laying off. All these companies have made, not massive layoffs, but they're making little, and that's accelerating, and then we do see the big ones hitting too right now, and that's not going to slow down. Yeah, super interesting. Although it should be added that the jobs report was stronger than anticipated recently. I do agree. I think it's overrated. But listen, I'll beat that drum all day long because I'm an optimist. It does seem to be optimistically heading in the right direction. I do think, even though like things have kind of sucked lately, I do think there's opportunity out there and folks are hiring. 100%.
So there are unfilled jobs. What I think the big issue is, a lot of folks that are unemployed have a skills gap between what they have and what people are hiring for. And they're like, what the heck? I can't get a job. And it's like, yeah, but like, you got
to retool. You got to reinvent.
Yeah.
You got to reskill.
Yeah. You need sales skills. You need to be a storyteller. And they're just like, that's not what I do. I'm like, well, that's why you don't.
I know, but that's not going to change the outcome.
Yeah. Christian says it doesn't help me any if you need more construction workers in Texas. Christian, I know a relocation company that could get you to that construction site in Texas. Don't you worry. You probably got a ton of equity in your OC home. Rob Zeit says unemployment combined with job seeking, i.e., how many people are unemployed, but they feel they can find something better, might be more insightful. Leave it to Air Inc. to come up with a new indicator, single-handedly making the world smarter. All right, unemployment rate overrated. You're 2 for 2, Paul. Don't mess it up. Here we go. Third one is Israel and the Iran conflict. Oh, light stuff, huh?
Yeah, sorry. I think the severity of this is underrated.
Yeah, why is that?
And just because I don't think we really I don't know. I just think the instability of the entire region and how that's going to bring in other partners into this conflict, I think it could have a real, big consequences for us here in the United States. Not just, using our military, but I think it could also have some economic implications as well.
I think you're right. I think this is a really big deal.
I really do.
Israel is always going to be our ally. Iran is now in the mix. Iran is aligned with China and Russia and North Korea and those, bad boys.
Turkey.
And now, now what it's going to come down to is, allies versus Axis powers all over again. And it does feel like a tinderbox over there. So,
well, I think they're also itching to use. Now, I don't know if this, but they want war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I hope you're wrong, but I think you're
I hope
right.
I'm wrong too. I hope I'm wrong too.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're regrettably 3 for 3 here, Paul. Way to bring the mood down. We were doing so well.
All right, you got another one for me?
We were doing so well. Debbie says, "Nice job ruining the whole vibe here." No, I'm just kidding. She didn't say that. I was just joking. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get off this subject. Let's get to the next one here. Number 4, overrated, underrated, the presidency.
I think it's overrated. I think, what? I would love to see a presidency where they're boring. I want boring candidates. I don't need,
got one.
cults of personality. I want a boring candidate. I want people to run the government. Be fiscally responsible, but also very socially minded. Like, I don't need these cults of personality.
Dude, George Bush and Jimmy Carter are looking real good right now, right? It's like, I don't need a reality star. I don't need all this stuff, It's like, just give me a peanut farmer and whatever happened to just a good old nepotist trying to get through 4 years,
Give me a good legislator. Give me a good legislator. Give me somebody who can balance the books,
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I also, I'm a big fan of the podcast Freakonomics, and Freakonomics did a study on how much does the presidency really matter, and they revisit it every election year, basically to reassure us that, the presidency isn't as important. I mean, we're all like living and dying on this election, right? And the truth of the matter is, not a ton changes. Yes, there's some major legislation that comes about that is very charged, and we have strong opinions and feelings about. But I'll say from an economic standpoint, which is one of the big things that people talk about. Oh, the economy's going to do this if one wins or the other doesn't win. Historically, they show a very small difference. And they actually show that the stock market, which we already said is a terrible indicator for economic health, but the stock market actually performs better under Democratic presidents, which is counterintuitive for a lot of people.
Yes.
And you can fact check me on that if you want to, but that's the truth. Right. We're sitting here at 43 highs right now. But anyway, I digress. You're right. The presidency is overrated. Much more important is our local city council people and aldermen and judges and blah, blah, blahs, and nobody votes for those things. So get out the vote, y'all. All right. Last ball up. The WNBA, the dub, overrated, underrated?
Definitely underrated. To me, the WNBA is probably one of the best sporting events to watch.
Wow.
Yeah, I think those women.
Why is that?
It's entertaining. It's nowhere near the NBA. I put the NBA down here. Those guys are overpaid. These women They gut it out. They're feisty. I love it, you know. And
They are feisty.
I recommend watching the
Spirited.
WNBA. So they're
Yeah.
underrated right now.
I'll be honest with you, Paul. I have watched more women's basketball in the last 12 months than I've watched in 41 previous years combined. It has there's a toughness to the game. While the men's game has got softer, the women's game has got. I think they're going to start packing weapons. I think they're going to start bringing box cutters out there now. It's a new rule I heard passed. You know, so it's like 80s NBA all of a sudden out there, right? They're having fights out there. There's love triangles. There's drama and intrigue. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that you just don't get anywhere else.
But it's good. It's good basketball. It's good basketball.
Yeah, well, it is good basketball. Caitlin Clark, underrated passer, by the way.
Oh,
anyway,
underrated player.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think
she's in the talks for MVP. I think she was in the talks for the MVP. You know, you're right. The WNBA is underrated. I'll be honest with you. I've never been to a WNBA game, though, Paul.
Either have I.
So here we are. All right, and the big reveal. This has been a lot of fun, Paul. Thanks everybody for getting in the comments. Hit that like button. We got Morgan Crosby from TI in studio tomorrow. It's gonna be lit, as the kids say. But Paul, leave us with one final thought before we sign off.
Yeah, I mean, I just think everybody should get into the mindset of treat yourself as like your own business, and really try to fine tune those selling skills and those communication skills. And if you can do that, I think you'll have success, and you can navigate through these challenging times, when looking for work. So.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Hey, if people want to get in touch with you, Paul, what's the way they should reach out?
Yeah, they can message me on LinkedIn, and I can, they can just message me there. I'm always on LinkedIn.
Cool.
So.
Awesome. Sounds good, y'all. Hit them up. Rob says, great show. I'd hire you both. You're a smart man, Rob. I always said that about you. Take care, everybody. We will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Ben.